Vicky here. So today we are actually looking at another time lapse of the sun in the garden. The reason that I'm doing this again, I last did this in, oh wow, it's bright when that kitchen light came on, huh? But the reason that I'm doing this is that I last checked the sunlight patterns in the garden in January. And one thing about January versus April that I didn't consider at the time was that in April, the leaves have trees on them. Sorry, let's rewind that. The trees have leaves on them. So in January, I saw that the entire hillside in the backyard was bright and sunny pretty much all day long. Now, as I was, watering in the yard and doing other things, I started noticing that there was quite a bit of shade, particularly in this upper left corner of the yard where I have the tomatoes. And of course, tomatoes are one of the plants that's going to require the most sun out of everything in your garden. So I spent some time here the last day or so just trying to again look to see where my sunlight is falling. Now that I have a little of this remembrance that trees do have leaves. I will probably repeat this again at the height of the summer and then again in the fall, just so that I can get a good understanding year round as the seasons change what it's looking like. So I started this at 6 in the morning. I ended around 8-ish at nighttime. And here we see the sun, really starting to come up, and that entire upper corner is shaded. Now, I wouldn't call it full shade. Some sun is getting through the leaf coverage, but it is not bright by any means. Um, that tree that is shading it does move off fairly quickly, though. So here by about 8:30 ish in the morning, there was some sun already starting to get to the plants, which I did find a little encouraging. Um, but I think it really took a little bit longer for that tree to really fully move off and keep going, so that we could get that sunlight in. I am curious to see how that extra shade that I didn't anticipate is going to impact the tomatoes planted in the top first two raised beds, because those are the ones really getting the most shade at the moment. And I did notice one of the plants in that second top raised bed is sort of leaning away from the corner, which to me indicates, it's trying to get more sun than it is currently getting. Here we can see that top corner bed is now getting full sun because the shade of the tree has moved on. So I tried to kind of tally it up and see really what we were looking at in terms of the number of hours of sunlight, like direct sunlight, that the tomatoes in those top two beds are getting. And I really am not so certain that it is the 6 hours or so that we would need in order to call it full sun. Um, but we'll see. I mean, it's all a good, grand experiment. I will say that the tomatoes in the first bottom bed seem to be doing the best. I mean, those things have grown so much. Even today, I had to go and do another row of the twine, because they had outgrown what I did just, you know, a week ago. So it's been pretty incredible The first bed on the top is not growing as quickly, but it's also a different variety. So it's hard for me to say that it's 100% due to the shade issue versus just being different tomatoes. Or it could be a watering issue. I mean, the first bed on the bottom is much more engulfed in the water issue down below. So it could be getting more water in the roots there than the bed at the top. But one thing I did notice in this experiment, in terms of analyzing the sun patterns here in the spring, is that that tree really is doing quite a bit of shading in the top row, first bed there. Here we are, it's not even noon yet. Oh, 12:30. And you can see that it is already quite shaded. Now, yes, some sun is getting through those leaves, but man, it really just took it from a definite full sun bed to a maybe partial shade, because this tree has quite a bit more development. It's a bigger tree than the one that shades it in the morning, and it does not really get out of the shade anytime soon. Now, there is another period of time in the afternoon where there is some guaranteed sunlight on that bed, but I don't know. So, anywho, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Overall, this was a pretty good sunny day to run this experiment. I keep saying experiment. It's not really an experiment. It's just the sun. It's just how it is. But I wish I had had the forethought to do a recording like this last summer when we first moved in. Don't know that that would have had a huge impact on my garden planning because, well, I'm kind of limited in my options. I, at the moment, due to the water issue, couldn't conceive of having another row beneath this, like a third row of raised beds. I just can't imagine that at the moment. So I I wouldn't say that it would have changed where I put the beds, but it might have impacted what I decided to put in the beds. And apologies for the video quality here. My phone obviously decided to autofocus on the sticky note and then never refocused. So it is what it is. I can't redo all day yesterday. But that said, I might have been able to change what I put in the beds because tomatoes do require more sun than other vegetables. So that top bed that has the most shade and is only now here at about, I don't know, 3 3:30 in the afternoon starting to get sun again. I could have put more shade tolerant vegetables in that. Maybe things like the lettuce. I could have had just a whole bed of lettuce right there, or maybe some herbs that are happy to have that break from the sun from 12 to 3:30, you know. I do think there are quite a few plants in the garden that would benefit from having that kind of dedicated time in the hottest part of the day shaded. I just don't particularly think that tomatoes are that plant. you know. So the good news is there is quite a bit here of sun in the afternoon. So there was maybe in that topmost bed, that's the one that I think has the most shade issue. There was about an hour and a half of full sun in the morning. So from like 10 to 11:30 full sun, and then here from maybe 3 until the shade from the fence catches up and goes over, we have another period of time. So we're looking at least 4 hours of direct full sun, which isn't nothing. I just am curious to see how it will impact the yield. Now, as part of my, I guess, my preferences in gardening, I won't be planting tomatoes in these four beds again next year because I like to move the types of vegetables from bed to bed so that, if there's disease issues or nutrient issues or whatever, the same crop isn't living in that soil again. I think it's a pretty common practice to do that. I know lots of people who do that, and I think like commercially, that's something that farmers do in terms of rotating crops. So I don't think that's weird, or bad advice. Anywho, so those four beds won't have tomatoes next year, and I can maybe use this as a knowledge opportunity to try to remember that that top bed only gets about 4 hours of direct sunlight. And so next year I can go ahead and plant it with those crops that are going to be less susceptible to needing sun. Does that make sense? I hope it does. It makes sense in my mind. So hopefully it's not just me who thinks that. Um, yeah, I really did enjoy seeing the sun patterns in the spring. It really is just very different than it was in the winter. Here we are at, I don't know, maybe about 6 o'clock, 6:30, and almost all of the beds are already in the shade. One thing I might consider once we get the water issue taken care of and the landscaped grass portion of that hill is dry and stable, for next year I might put another row of raised beds down there, so that I can better take advantage of the sunlight because it does last a little longer all day long, both at the morning and in the evening down on the landscape grass portion, which is interesting because in the winter, in January, we saw very little shade or very little sun on the landscape grass portion at all, which is why I targeted the upper part of the yard. But yeah, it's just a little different, I guess, here in the springtime. But yeah, can't wait to see how everything does. I'm very excited and hope you have a great day. Till next time. Bye.